Okay, in this second part of our chapter review, we're going to talk about the other ways in which we could find missing sides or missing angles on right triangles. This is where we use our trig. If you look at these problems, this is 47 and 48 in your packet. We're finding the missing sides. And we don't have two of the three sides, so we can't use Pythagorean theorem. If you look at 47, that's a 74-degree angle. That is not a special right triangle. So that leaves us just with trig. And remember our trig functions, you have sine, which is opposite over hypotenuse. We have cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And we have tan, which is opposite over adjacent. So we want to look at this picture. We want to look at our reference angle. Our reference angle is this one right here, which is 74 degrees. And we want to look at what part we're trying to find and what piece is given to us in relation to that reference angle. So in relation to the 74 degrees, I have the opposite and I have the hypotenuse. So which trig function deals with opposite and hypotenuse? That would be sine. So I want to set it up to say sine of 74 degrees equals opposite, which is 11, and hypotenuse, which is x. Now, the way I'm going to solve this, I'm going to erase my work down here, is remember we're going to put this piece over 1, and we're going to cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I get x times sine 74 equals 1 times 11, which is 11. You want to ask yourself, is x by itself yet? And it's not. So what's happening with the x? Well, it's being multiplied by sine of 74. So to get rid of the thing that's with the x, I've got to do my inverse operation, which means I have to divide whatever's being multiplied with x. Whatever I do to one side, have to do to the other. So what I'm going to put in my calculator is 11 divided by sine of 74. So I'm going to go over to my calculator and I'm going to double check. It was 11 divided by sine of 74. So I am going to put that in my calculator. So I'm going to write 11. Oops, first I have to get to my scratch pad. Now I'm going to say 11 divided by, I'm going to pull up my trig function, sine 74, and click enter. And it gives me 11.44. And our directions said around to the nearest tenth. So my answer is 11.4. And they didn't give me any units, so I could just leave it like that. So let's look at the next example. I've got number 48 up here. I've got a reference angle of 33 degrees. And it looks like I have the adjacent and I have the hypotenuse. That would be cosine. So cosine of 33 equals 19 over x. I'm going to go through the same procedure, cross multiply. When I cross multiply, x is still not by itself, so I've got to divide cosine on both sides. So what I put in my calculator is 19 divided by cosine of 33. So I'm going to go back to my calculator, say 19 divided by cosine 33, and click enter, and I get 22.7 would be my answer rounded. And that would be how I'd find that missing side. Now, after we found missing sides, we talked about finding missing angles. And this is where my inverse function came into play. We have sine and we have inverse sine. We have cosine inverse cosine, tan, inverse tan. So the setup is almost the same. Remember that when you find sine of some angle is going to equal something over something. And the opposite and the hypotenuse are going to be some sort of numbers. Well, when I do the inverse, it's like these things flip. What I put in my calculator is the actual ratio, and it's going to give me my angle. So in 58, I've got this angle here that I'm trying to find. So you want to ask yourself, just like always, what parts do they give me in relation to the reference angle? Well, that piece is adjacent, and that piece is hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine, but since I'm trying to find the angle, I'm going to do inverse cosine and put 12 over 31. So this time, when I go to my calculator, I'm going to jump to the trig button, and I'm going to use the inverse function. And I believe it was 12 divided by 31. Click enter. And so that gives me an angle of about 67 degrees, 67.2. Direction said round to the nearest degree. So it was 67 is rounded to the nearest whole. So 67 degrees. Again, I enter 12 divided by 31 with the inverse function. And it was 67 degrees. So let's look at 59. This time I'm finding this angle here. And I will want to look at what they give me. Give me the opposite piece and the hypotenuse, which is my sine function, but I'm finding an angle, so I'm going to use inverse sine. And I say 20 over 26. I'm going to go back to my calculator. I use my inverse sine. Having issues here. 20 divided by 26, enter. So my angle is 50 degrees, and it looks like I've messed up. Let's cut that. All right, I had a little issue with my smartboard. So we had 50 degrees, so x equals 50 degrees. So just remember, you're using your -1, your inverse functions to find angles. You're using just the plain sine, cosine, tan to find sides. So then we came to problems where we were using our trig functions to solve word problems. So we want to try to draw a picture to go with this. Remember, elevation is going to be when you're looking up at something. Depression is when you're looking down at something. Remember, we also talked about when you have a triangle, this angle here is never, ever the angle that I'm marking in my triangle. So problem 69 says, at a certain time of day, the angle of elevation, okay, I know the angle of elevation goes up, of the sun is 34 degrees. A tree casts a shadow, so you've got this tree, got your sun back here, and it's casting a shadow that is 42 feet long. Well, where is the shadow always going to be? On the ground. So that is 42 feet. Now, trees generally stand up straight, so my right angle is here. And they're asking, how tall is the tree? Well, anytime they ask how tall something is, they're talking about that straight up and down. So now we have a right triangle picture to go with our word problem. We want to follow the same procedures that we just did. What do they give me in relation to this reference angle, 34 degrees? Well, they give me opposite, and they give me adjacent. That would be a tan function. So I say tan of 34 degrees equals x over 42. I'm going to put that over 1 and cross multiply. So it's 42 times tan of 34 equals x. Well, this time I got lucky, and when I cross multiplied, my x is by itself. We love those. So I'm going to put into the calculator 42 times tan of 34. 42 times, do my trig function, tan 34, I get 28.3. And I want to double check. Word problems, you're always going to have some sort of unit of measure. Now, I'm going to look back at the directions, and they say to round to the nearest whole. So we're not looking for the 0.3. We're just looking for the 28, and I'm looking for how tall the tree is. So my answer, the tree is 28 feet. So that would be my final answer. The next one we're going to do is another one of these word problems. We're doing number 71 in your packet. This one's talking about a plane approaching an airport. Now, in your picture, I would always label. You don't have to be an artist. You can just label where things are. So, generally, a plane is where? It's in the air. It's approaching an airport to land. So, we've got this airport landing down here. The plane is somewhere up here. The pilot radios the air traffic controller when he is at an elevation of 2,200 feet. Well, that is essentially saying he's 2,200 feet in the air. He sights the airport at an 18-degree angle of depression. Okay? I'm going to mark my depression angle 18 degrees. Remember, this angle is the one that I'm never, ever, ever going to use in these problems. First thing I want to do is mark these two the same before I even continue reading my word problem. So I've got how high it is. I've got my angle. Now I want to see what they're asking for. How far is the plane from the airport? Okay, this was our landing strip. The actual airport was right here. Okay, so you want to figure out, they're asking the plane from the airport. That's got to be that distance. If I measure the bottom, that's just measuring the landing strip, and the plane is up in the air. So I want to look at my reference angle of 18 degrees. I've got opposite and hypotenuse. That is going to be a sine function. So sine of 18 degrees equals 2,200 over x. I'm going to cross multiply. My x is still not by itself. So x equals 2,200 over sine of 18. So I'm going to go put that in my calculator. 2,200 divided by sine 18. I'm going to click enter, and it's 7,119.4. 7,119.4, but they told me to round to the nearest hundred. 7,119, and it was feet, I believe. Let's see. Yes, feet was my unit of measure. And that would be my answer. Remember that we have a long tutorial on Wednesday. You have plenty of time to come ask me questions. Thursday we will review in class, and Friday is your test.